Hello,
So
hello. Oh, yes. Gosh, welcome back again. This is a beautiful episode of Age of Awæcnian, Soulful Stories Unveiled. I didn't sing it this time. I do have the tune in my head, and it was interesting with the Age of Aquarius song, which Flea and I have spoken about. I sent it to her because I was like, I need to listen to this song. And the lyrics in there, oh my goodness, these people were on some amazing high vibe and like channeling through their lyrics. And now we've channeled it into the essence of this. How are you feeling, Flea?
Oh yeah, hyped up after that, and I feel like I just want to get moving now because our next guest is moving, which is so exciting. And it's just like, oh, those vibes. It's like, hang on a sec. I think I've started my day around the wrong way because I was more tired this morning than I feel now, which is always beautiful.
I love that energy, and it's been so beautiful to weave today with these amazing women that have come into our day. And for us to even, share our stories and insights weaved in with theirs has been really beautiful to see unfold and share more of. And this next gorgeous woman, Loz, I met about a month ago now at the beautiful Beam Awards, where Awæcnian Academy was nominated for 2 awards, and we won New Emerging Business of the Year with a beautiful silver award. And Loz was at my table, and because it was so loud and so many people, and she's over there, I was like, oh, that lady looks cool. She had these cool flowers, and I'm like, oh, that's very Frida Kahlo, very artistic. I'm like, I'll need to chat with her later. And then I think it was like right towards the end of the night, I'm like, let's all have a dance. And then we chatted, and then we just kept chatting. And then I was like, where are you? She's like, Ipswich. I'm like, oh my gosh, so are we. And we've so got to connect. So it's been really beautiful to just make these connections and dive more into her story. And, Loz is such an unstoppable inspiration. She is a healthy habit and mojo mentor, and we feel the good mojo vibes with her pink vibes and the energy. She's a motivation maven, an author, a pro speaker, a lycra loving hype girl. And oh my goodness, we feel the hype, we feel the energy. And sometimes, even when we're not 100%, you bring it your all, and it does get to shift and make magic happen when you chat with people. So welcome, Loz. It's so beautiful to have you on.
Yes, thank you. What a beautiful introduction. And how cool was that night? I feel like at Beam Awards, there was so much energy in the room being exchanged. And I saw you across the table, and it's like everyone's having a chat. And right at the very end, when we finally got time to have that conversation, there was so much serendipity. I'm like, do you know this person? And you're like, yeah. And then you're like, do you know this person? And all of these mutual contacts. And we were like some of the last people to leave that event.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It was so serious. And Flea and I talk about these synchronicities and people that we get to meet. And now you two have met, and we get to dive deeper into getting to know a little bit more about you. And I suppose this holistic world in tapping into mind, body, spirit. When we were talking, I know you love this beautiful world as well, but also having that scientific logic background in being
Mm.
able to shift people's mindsets through language. And it's a passion that both you and Flea share so beautifully. I'd love to know a little bit more about, with the audience that are listening, what you do, why you love it, what got you into it, and then we'll just go with the flow from there.
I love these types of conversations where it's very organic. So, I think always as a child, I kind of was like, I was quite a problem solver. I started my first business at 15 because my school implemented like standard issue school bags. So like everybody had to have identical school bags. And so what started happening is like kids were picking up other kids' school bags and taking them home. And I was like, okay, this is a bit of a problem. So devise this idea where we get like, I would make up these individual bag tags. I actually went to the principal and got permission to use the school logo to make it official. And that was a really big deal. And I'd spent my spare periods going through the whole school getting orders. So I made thousands of dollars. And I used all my dad's resources. He had a home office. So what I did is I used Word and I made a template. And it was very painstakingly like time consuming because I had to individually put like every kid's name in and spell it right. And then I'd print them all out. I'd chop them all up. I'd laminate them individually, put holes in them and deliver them. So it was like this whole process. But I think from a young age, it's always been about when people have challenges, how do we create solutions that make the challenge go away? So as a kid, I didn't think like that, but that's just, I didn't realize that's what was happening. And so I guess as a journey through to adulthood, that spirit has always been there. And I was really kind of pulled towards maths and science-based stuff. So leaving school, I was going to become an engineer. I got a scholarship to uni in IT, funnily enough. And up on the wall behind me, which you can't see very well, there is actually a degree there in that very subject. So, but what happened is that my life actually took quite an odd turn through my career through university. So halfway through my degree, I started getting a lot of gastrointestinal challenges. And I can't sugarcoat this. I actually started pooping blood, and I was so sick. I rapidly started losing weight, got to nearly 40 kilos, and they said, you need to, like, we don't know what's wrong with you. You're going to have to go in for, like, a procedure so we can find out. And I remember Googling it, like, the night before, Dr. Google, trying to work out what I had. And, I was like, oh, my God, there's this thing called ulcerative colitis. I fitted, like, every symptom picture for that disease. I'm like, I better not have that. That would be the shittest thing ever, and that would be the end of my life. That's exactly what I had. So, because right? There's an intuition there, like, So being told that I had an autoimmune disease was quite a challenge for me to manage because I was such a high achiever, and it knocked me for six. Like, I literally had to, like, stop my uni studies for a period of time. And it kind of forced me to have to start working on healing. And unfortunately, the mainstream medical model for me didn't really work very well. I was pushed and pulled from one medical specialist to the other, dosed up to the eyeballs and antidepressants and all types of things like corticosteroids. I lost and then I gained, and then I lost and then I gained, and then lost like heaps of weight. And I generally felt really crap. So this was kind of my pathway into what else is out there. So for me, I ended up exploring like integrative medicine, connecting with other people, and really diving deep into what that could look like. And of course, I started getting better, right? Looking into things like energy, but then also understanding science, speaking to doctors that were integrative, that were across multiple disciplines, because they treat the body as a whole person, right? Not specialists that are like, oh, it's this system, and you speak to this specialist, so like that has nothing to do with this system, so I can't tell you why this system's broken. So yeah, we have quite a convoluted model, I think, in our Western paradigm of medicine. And so I ended up going back to university, and I changed university completely. We had a campus open in Ipswich. At the time, we had University of Queensland open up, and I had to change degrees slightly. But when I graduated from uni, I was still quite unwell. I had developed like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. I was exhausted all the time. And when I graduated, I got accepted into two sorts of roles. So I had my lecturer line me up with a job for the Office for Women, writing feminist policy of all things. And then I had applied for a cadetship program with the ACCC. So it was this odd like existence with like science and woo-woo, not really sure. But what I ended up doing instead was I started a business. I didn't really have the confidence to think that I could work for somebody else. I was really quite concerned about my ability to show up for work, just to be very, very honest. And so my father and I, there was a need in Ipswich for mobility equipment. Nobody was selling things like scooters or wheelchairs or walkers to people with disabilities or old people. So, we started a business in 2007 in Ipswich doing that so people didn't have to make arduous trips to Brisbane. Well, I mean, that opened a whole can of worms when it comes to connection and learning and growing and being. So, running a business, anybody that's listening, it's the best professional development course you'll do in your entire life, right? Like, you learn so much about yourself and learn what not to do. I see Flea going, yes. So, the thing is, I think you learn through failing forwards in business a lot. You're like, well, that didn't work. That was a bit shit. So I'm going to do it like this time. So, I guess I spent nearly the last 18 years kind of on that journey. But, another couple of crossroads happened for me where, I'd sort of gotten back in control of my health somewhat, but, that wasn't really reflecting on the outside. I kind of lost confidence with who I was. I was a little bit overweight. And then in 2015 to 2016, 3 big things happened in my life that changed the whole trajectory of my life. Thing number 1 was my business partner. It was actually my father. We had a physical altercation in our workplace. My father hasn't spoken to me since 2015. All of my achievement in my life, having to be a high achiever and striving for greatness, was all formulated around the expectations and value systems of this person. And I literally was slapped in the face, literally. So that was the first thing that happened. That started to challenge my perceptions of my identity, who I was in the world and what the world was all about. And then the second thing, which is one of the greatest lessons and teachings and silver linings in my life, was that my first husband actually took his own life 2 days after my birthday. And then 4 weeks later, my grandpa died. So all of these male energetic role models that I'd had in my life, this really yang energy, which I guess my life has been plagued by, it all just imploded on itself and disappeared in less than 6 months. And I didn't know who I was, didn't understand my place in the world, didn't understand really what this was all about. But I knew that I just had to keep just putting one foot in front of the other. And I'm actually doing a TEDx talk about this. And the premise is my husband's suicide was the best thing that ever happened. That's a very big and bold statement, because there's no way I would be here chatting to you lovely ladies if that one event had not occurred in my life.
Wow.
So I think that, that was kind of the biggest challenge to face in a very short period of time. And that helped me grow. And so I've had to navigate this journey of self-development through that. That mobility business is about to be no more. It's getting moved on to another organization. So that's very exciting. But, going through that, I fitness and health and well-being and community and energy and woo-woo all found me, but it's really founded in science. And so over the last, 8-ish years, 8 to 9 years since all of that stuff happened, I've had a brain tumor. I've had a hole in my heart. I was sexually assaulted. I've had a stack of other situations. It's a word that I made up. Occur, right? But for some reason or another, I don't know how I managed. Well, I didn't at the time realize that I was working through some really, really hard shit, because I guess that's how I'm programmed. But coming out of all of that, a lot of people started to notice and like, wow, you've made some massive transformations, even physically. I mean, when my husband died, I didn't know what else to do. I joined a gym and threw myself into something really crazy and ended up getting really fit, then doing bodybuilding shows, but then ended up doing 13 shows in 14 months, developing eating disorders, totally wrecking myself. And that's not the way to be, right? It's not sustainable. So I think where I kind of come to tie it back to the question that you asked, science-based is important for me. because it helps me understand my place in the world. As an evidence-based coach, I span about 13 different disciplines. Everything that I teach and educate my community about, I've literally had to do for myself. So I found personal training because after doing bodybuilding shows, the last advice I got from my last coach, I wanted to have a glass of red wine the night before my show. And she goes, babe, why don't you consider snorting cocaine because there's no calories? And it's like, oh my gosh, penny drop, right? So as a consequence, I was like, shit, there's going to be a better way. I've got to learn about this stuff. So becoming a personal trainer was like me search and research at once. Learning about nutrition, it was the same. I had a sugar addiction and I had disordered eating and breathing and cognitive behavioral therapy and all of the wonderful things that I've kind of got in my spectrum of tools. It's walking the talk. And I think a lot of people don't do that, guys. A lot of people come in on their soapboxes on social media because they saw something or went to something and are like, oh, cool, I'm an expert now. I'm going to do a heap of video marketing and get my message out. I'm like, you actually have no idea what you're talking about. And what you're telling people is so dangerous. It does my head in.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, Loz. There is so much in just that capture. And
Right?
and this is why Flea and I love just people's stories. It's like, what an inspiration.
Thank you. Thank you.
Flea,
I
what's
didn't mean
landed?
to do it for an
Oh,
inspiration, but it's
no,
just what it
but
is, right?
yeah. Flea, what's landed for
Yeah.
you so far? There's like so many pieces.
Oh, absolute heaps. Me personally, I've struggled with a lot of that. I guess imposter syndrome. It's like, oh well, I haven't finished this course and I haven't done that. And it was only recently that it's like, actually, no, the life experience is so much more valuable. It's like what I've
Right?
lived through. Like I can't put that experience on a piece of paper. There's no way
Exactly.
to even describe to half the people like even a minute amount of things that I've experienced in my lifetime. And it's like, you know, those catastrophes and those things that just like pop up. It just feels like year after year after year of like, oh, another one. Oh, there's another one. And I love that like this awareness brings that into the forefront. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, here's another one and here's another one. I always do a
Your
card spread
situations,
before we
they're
go
your
live.
situations right there.
I'd love that word. That is so my word now. Shit. No, no, it's not. It's not going
Situation.
to come out. the shit. We'll just go with shits. I always do a card reading before we go, just to sort of like tie the pieces together, because for me, like it's just information, and that information comes through us intuitively anyway. So I just love this because it tests my intuition and makes me trust myself more. But there was the very interesting spread because I've got like this material and spiritual prosperity. There's this spiritual union, this love begins, and like meeting you, and you're like, oh, hi, vibe. And then that story, the other two cards that I was sitting with the whole time going, why are they there? They don't make any sense. The solitude or the hermit card and the emotional withdrawal. And I was like, oh, okay, there it is right there. Because I was like,
Right?
sitting in this spread, it made no sense at all. And I'm like, oh, the emotional withdrawal, that catastrophe that has to happen, ties in with literally everything we've spoken about today. Like we just keep
Yeah.
amping up the levels. Like if you go back and you watch the last two interviews from today, it just builds.
The
And
threads
you're
are
just
so,
tying it up with all of the information. It's like, wow.
yeah,
I
it's
got
really,
It's
goosebumps just hearing
yeah,
you articulate that.
yeah. It's powerful. And these threads of dealing with grief and pain and suffering that we as humans just get dealt with as part of that growth
Yeah.
is, again, there's a beauty and enrichment in it that you get to receive on the other side. When you're in it, the situation, it is heart wrenching. And you just, in those times, like those that are listening, in those times where you're like, I don't know how I'm getting out of this. I don't know what I'm going to do in the next 5 minutes, let alone week, let alone day. But it's like you said, and this beautiful metaphor of the baby steps, and just putting one foot after the other, taking one breath after the other, and just slowing down to allow whatever it is in that moment to be felt.
Yep.
And yeah, it's so beautifully fascinating just to hear the depth of your own experience. And even I had a beautiful client today where it was these pieces of anxiety and fear and even the dark shadowy sides of suicide and death coming up in our chats. I was like, oh, there's this thread weaving through, not only for the individuals but for the collective. And
Yeah.
it's the woo-woo side of things that's coming through, but
Mm.
coming back to the body, coming back to listening to your own inner wisdom, your emotions, your feelings, what your body chemistry is telling you because of all the things that need to be shifted, it does have a logic behind it. And I know Flea and I also love tapping into, well, we know all these things and we know that there's hormones involved. And when we think about us as women and our cycle and our flow, there's things that are shifting hormonally, and then you could also look at the energetics behind it. And this is where I love blending the worlds. But I love that, with your background as well, allowing people who are perhaps more in that 3D framework of like, well, what does that mean? How do I understand that for my body or my mind? For them to click and then take the next steps, like that cog, that wheel.
Yes. And this is what I find is that being evidence-based, this is the challenge, is that a lot of what I do isn't evidence-based. And I know that sounds silly as an evidence-based coach, because a lot of the things I do in my personal life, I have card decks. I do readings every single day. I have crystals in the background. I have essential oils. I use things. I use prayer. I use like whatever it is, the things that work. But I think that what I've identified is that there's 5 habits that everybody has already. And what tends to happen is when people are in a crisis, they reach for these silver bullet, magic potion type solutions to solve all of their problems, but they overlook these 5 fundamentals. And these are very transactional, physical things we can do without going into woo woo, but they become gateways to woo woo, right? Or whatever you want to label that as. And so that's eating, breathing, sleep, movement, and hydration. I call them handbrake habits because most of them act as handbrakes on our life. And the thing about handbrakes is that I don't know about you, but I have totally driven a car with a handbrake on. Like 100% will put my hand up and admit that I have done that, right? So the thing is, like, it makes noises, it's got lights flashing and warning signals being like, bitch, take the handbrake off, right? And you just turn the music up louder and drive
Now,
faster, right? But the thing is, if you drive the car with a handbrake, it's not going to get very far very fast. Plus, it's going to burn out very quickly and it's going to cost a lot of money to fix. Humans aren't that dissimilar to cars, right? So the reality is if we're all driving around with at least one of those handbrakes, and let's be honest, most of us are driving around with most of those handbrakes on, it's very hard to break through and deal with challenging situations. When you have a crisis, a situation arise, if your sleep is crap, if you're not thinking about what you're putting in your mouth, if your breathing isn't adequate because your posture is not great, if you're not moving mindfully and you're not drinking enough water or maybe too many other substances, chances are there is a glass ceiling of potential on your ability to deal with that stuff. And so when we're talking about mindset and helping people unpack a whole heap of emotional baggage that may have been dragging around copiously for decades in some cases, that's a lot for somebody to try and manage in one fell swoop. And people are so scared by the prospect of an overnight overhaul that they just be like, nah, sweep it under the carpet again. And so I find being evidence-based is that we'll go, okay, of those 5 handbrake habits, what's either the one that's going to get you the biggest needle shift or the lowest hanging fruit? Sometimes it can be the same one. Mainly it's not. And mainly people pick the lowest hanging fruit. So, I find that once you can get some progress though, so for instance, if it's food, we can go, okay, like, let's look at what you're eating in a day. Where are there some opportunities for optimization? It's not like changing your whole friggin' diet. It's like, cool, if you're eating 2 times a day, can we get 3 meals in a day? Can we get a bit more protein per meal? Can we start thinking about eating more clean? Can we think about opportunities for connection? Can we think about eating mindfully? Once you start unpacking that and pulling that thread, people get progress. They feel better. They have more energy and they're like, oh my God, I've got some tangible, measurable results. Okay, what else? What else can we start to shift? So then we move on to another handbrake and eventually they'll be like, okay, I'm ready to talk about the elephant in the room right now. Do you know what I mean? And so some of that intangible stuff, which is like subjective, the woo-woo stuff, and it's never woo-woo, it's just emotional stuff, right? But we've kind of given it this label, and I feel like being evidence-based with a just touch of woo-woo, just a touch just there, it's like, you know, it allows me to, I guess, bridge that conduit with a lot of people who are so scared of what, you know, the 4D world can offer, you know, and beyond. Because, you know, when we live in a quantum space where all possibilities exist, right? And you realize that at some point in that journey, that 3D world, all of your time and space horizons eventually dissolve. And you realize that absolutely everything and anything is completely possible. But most people, they're so stuck in this tangible, provable, science-based, measurable shit. And that's great. I'll meet you there. But also, let's take you deeper and find the right community for you to thrive in.
And it's so scientific if you really do stop and think about it. Like, you can go into woo-woo and like all you have to do is start to look to nature, and the evidence is there. You look at our cycles, you know, the patterns on repeat, our history, like it, all the evidence is there. It's just some of it has been written as a fable and a myth, and some of it has been written as scientific evidence with some lovely fellow friend that decided to back me up. So yay, let's go with that one because that seems more plausible. The stories are real.
I agreed. It's there. I mean, it's in history, right? You mean you look at what civilizations were doing thousands and thousands and thousands of years before. You know, like woo-woo is just the shit science hasn't caught up to, right? It's literally like, yeah, and they've just gone, oh well, that's not, so then it can't be. And it's like, I feel like there is such a conversation piece around this, and when we're talking about energy spheres and you know the yin and yang energy and all of these polarizing things that we seem to think exist. I mean, there is no polar. There's a word, an African word that keeps coming up for me. It's called Ubuntu, and it's like what's in you is in me, and what's in me is in you. And it's like this cyclic, circular, secular, communal, integrated space to come from. You know, we've kind of sucked ourselves out of that somehow in a lot of ways. And even though we're more connected than ever, so many people are so isolated and scared because we are such communal creatures, and we crave the space, like the energetic space of other creatures like us. And so when we're locking ourselves in a room with synthesized light and no sun, no connection, only digital experiences in three-dimensional spaces, it's like, duh. No wonder we're so screwed up. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's so interesting, and I think about like my daughter and the generation of kids that have grown up in particularly the last decade, where technology is rising, continue to rise, and this piece about disconnect versus connection, where that illusion of they're feeling connected because they're gaming or they're watching the shows or they're on YouTube or doing the things on TikTok, whatever. But really there's that underlying, yes, it is connective in a way, like we're obviously able to talk to each other, but there's this other piece of like noticing the disconnect. And again, it's that those pieces of duality and those polarizing opposites of existing in both worlds, which again can be really confronting or hard to understand for the mind, because your body's experiencing this, or you're noticing this in this relationship, but then this part of your life is like, you know, experiencing deep connection and yeah, I think this piece around disconnect and coming back into that oneness, that Ubuntu that you mentioned. I know in a lot of Catholic schools they sing this song, and it's come from Africa, and as soon as you said that, I could hear these little kids singing in my head. But it's like that coming back into oneness, which is what Awæcnian is about, and the AE within Awæcnian, which is that fullness, which Flea channeled through when we were like brainstorming and feeling into, or what is it that we're creating and co-creating. I'd love for you really to add more into that piece of that connection, disconnect, coming back into oneness.
I feel like
we-
it's such a great topic, isn't it? Like you could talk about this for days, right?
Yeah. And so
yeah.
that's one of our big pillars, I suppose, well, the foundation piece of when we invite people in and talk into the stories, even though it's individualized, but there is these underlying themes that come through. Get Fleet, do you want to add a little bit more into there?
Yeah, the Awæcnian, and in particular the AE, we were actually talking about this today, and a lot of it links in with sacred geometry and the formation of the polar verse duality of the world. So not being in that distinct separation of good versus evil, it's rather it's a divider. So it's the four-way split of both the positive good and then the negative good as well. So when you have too much in excess and everything, it's something that's good, but we know that it's bad for us at the same time. So that's that opposite flip. And when you look at the AE symbol, so most sacred geometry is it's straight, it's masculine, it's all angular, they all come to points. If you look at Terence Howard or something, I think, is speaking out about this a little bit more on the feminine curve in sacred geometry. And for me, when I looked at this, it was like, oh, it's that four-way split. But if you imagine the AE in motion of both going in this movement, it then becomes the atom. And when you look at that symbol in the original Latin Greek origins, it actually meant one. So when you look at the whole, like the one of the universe, to awaken into your oneness, and that's that atom, that mersion of, basically physics, science, and spirituality. It's like coming together. All of this language
Yeah.
is the same.
Wow.
It's just the expression we need to comprehend this information. Some people see it in music. Some people it's in interactions. Some people read it through words. It's just the expression of our humanity, of this consciousness that we get to experience in this reality. And if I could teach this from day one, it's like that's the inspiration. It's like little kids that understand the fullness in themselves is literally part of that puzzle, because if you look at it, it looks almost like it's missing bits that interconnect with all of the other atoms that literally form us. And my spiritual awakening was some video where they were talking about, okay, you're not your body, you're not your mind, and all this, doing this exercise of looking at your hand. Yes, it's a hand. Okay, take the label away. What is it? It's muscle, it's tissue, it's bone, it's this. Okay, yeah, get all that. Okay, now what else is it? Eventually you get to the point where you've stripped away your biology and it's nothing but space. But you know that there's more. And that more doesn't have a name because it's not of this universe. It's not of the 3D. We can't label it with our things that are physical and stagnant. And it's a huge scientific feat to be able to talk in both languages and to understand and comprehend that, okay, we've got English, we've got an artistic expression, we've got a medical expression, we've got all of these different versions. And my grand awakening was just purely through the fact that I'd been to so many different Sunday schools of different dominions. And it was like, but it's all the same stuff. They use different words, but it's all the same stuff. If we can take the words and the dictation out of it, the humanness of it, and just look at the overlying concepts of what do we need to do to find peace and love within ourselves? Well, we have to love ourselves. We have to treat ourselves as our own universe and our own vessel, because this is the container we live on. Where is it reflected to us? In the earth that we live on. When we don't treat the earth well, it crumbles, it's destructive, it causes chaos. Hello, people, like, wake up. It's the evidence is there, but it's a lived experience. You have to live it to understand it. And that's the Awæcnian term, is that coming into that fullness of one and knowing that we're not separate, but we are separate at the same time, and to actually just live. Live.
Yeah. And
That's
that
what I felt,
expression.
where we're just
Sorry, you glitched a little, but yeah, you're right. That expression of the oneness, the stories, and noticing what we're shifting within ourselves. I know, Loz, you've written your own book, I suppose, about your journey, your experiences, this depth of, I suppose, touching on what Flea was saying of like when you're feeling stuck and how to shift that and just, come back into that wholeness of yourself and to come back to love yourself as well. I'd love for you to share more about like the book that you've just written, um, because it touches on, I suppose, all the things that Flea has said, your story, all of these individual parts, but then coming back into that wholeness of you rising
Yeah.
into who you are now. I'd love for you to share a little bit more about that.
I think for me, the power of narrative is so great that people forget. People forget how to tell stories and the connection that it has with others, because, what's in you is in me and what's in you is in you, right? So writing has always been a very important part of my process. Even as a kid, I would write every time I was frustrated. I would just write a lot of prose and poetry. And I never actually meant to write a book. Like, I'm going to be honest, I never meant to write a book. This is actually the second book I've written, but it's a complete rewrite of the first book. So the first book that I wrote, it came about just by writing down a whole heap of just shit like that was in my head, because I was like, I can't process this. I didn't want to talk to people. I didn't want to engage. And so kind of just these streams of consciousness, which became blogs. And over a period of time, those blogs got turned into a book. Unfortunately, that process creatively was quite stagnated. I went through a publishing house that would help me, like a self-publishing arm of a big publishing house that is basically connected to a lot of people in the spiritual realm, right? There's a big publishing house, very good for like well-being and personal development and spirituality. So they had a self-publishing arm. So I chose them from some advice from a great guy called Dr. John D. Martini. He told me to go through them, and I trusted his opinion. So I went through them, and unfortunately that process kind of destroyed all confidence in me. They basically told me that because of the depth and the heaviness of the weight of some of the concepts that were in my story, that, and they're American owned, so let me just give you some context, there would be so much opportunity for litigation, it would be in my best interest to not talk about those at that depth. So I didn't have the freedom to share what I just shared with you guys a little bit earlier, but I pretty much had to sterilize my entire narrative. I'm going to show you something. This is that book. Hang on. Oh, yeah, I'm attached to my computer. It's just here. This was that book, right? Boring as, sterile. It's sterile as, right? So it was like an anticlimax for me. And so that process of trying to share and navigate that cathartic journey that I'd been on, where I felt like I'd like kind of done all this amazing stuff. And look, it landed really well with people. People were like, that was really good. But I guess I was never really proud of it. I didn't really push it. I felt like it was a bit of a failure because I couldn't be genuine. And I feel like people felt that even though they didn't say it. There was an energetic exchange of that. So I kind of leaned into that for a while. I put it to the side. And then I actually went to an event in Ipswich, a Women's Day event a couple of years ago. And there was a speaker there. Her name was Lucy Bloom. She had bright pink mohawk. She's very inspiring. She told this story I actually write about this in my new version of this book. She told this story of how, she was going to go write this business book and she was really anxious. And then, she got this cash advance, this check to write this business book. And like, she felt obligated to write this book. She's like, I actually don't want to write a business book. I don't know what to do. I might need to send the money back. Then a good friend of hers was like, bitch, just write a book about your life. And so she did that. And I was like, oh my God, like I had this awakening and I was like, oh, what if I just wrote a book about my life? Like what if I went and rewrote my entire book again? So I spent more than a year, probably 16 to 18 months, working through like rewriting my entire story, rewriting the story back into the story. And that's kind of been the process. So I found an amazing place to publish through. They have been amazing. They're in Australia, women-led, completely female-led team. Just they get the power of expressing yourself through the power of narrative. And I said, actually, I didn't know what I was going to call the book. And I was having a float. And because during the float, I get what I call transient hypofrontality. So for a very small space of time, the prefrontal cortex of my brain, which is like this all day, it was like, nah. And it shut down for a bit. And because I'd been overthinking, I'd be like, oh my God, what am I going to call this book? It's going to be punchy. And I had this massive download, right? And it was like, your book, can I swear? Can I say a swear word? Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. That's the name of that's the name of my book.
Get the fuck unstuck.
Yeah. And it's a bright, and I'm like, oh my God, get the fuck unstuck. And so then I fixated on it for the rest of that float, and I had to actually get out and write it down. So this download came to us, like, it's going to be called Get the Fuck Unstuck. This is going to be like the best thing that you ever did. And so I remember walking out of that float, and the girl at City Cave was like, how was your float? And I go, I think I just made about $1 million. And she's like, oh. I actually told the owner that. I told the owner that. She laughed so hard. But it's been such an amazing journey the second time round, and I'm really glad that I got the chance to do this, to be able to be able to do this again. It's actually, don't have a copy of the book in here in my office because it actually doesn't come out till Monday. Well, it's a bit weird, but it's something that I'm very proud of, and that entire process, I think, of really understanding myself. Writing a book is like running a business, right? You kind of literally, like, you're laying all your cards on the table. And I have to say, like, because of the title of my book, I deliberately titled it like that to just separate the people that just weren't interested in the type of person I am. I'm like equal parts really camp and consultant. Like, I'm a camp consultant. Like, I'm camp as, like, I wear tutus and I have, like, I don't, like, thing is, like fuck average. Like life's too short to be average. And I think that the wake-up calls that I had, through all the grief and the challenge and the adversity and the loss and the guilt and the shame and all of those polarizing emotions that make no sense in the moment, I think I realized, you know what, like, fuck it. Like if you want to wear the fucking tutu, wear the tutu. Like, just go do it. Have a big bloody bright pink light in the background in your office. Like, no, like, who gives a shit? And I feel like everyone's so busy, trying to be busy. Like, I don't know about you, but, like, I go to Woolworths and they're like, oh, how you been? You been busy? I'm like, no, actually. I am sitting cozy right now. I am full. I am purposeful. I am passionate. I'm driven. I'm productive. Don't use the B word on me. So people are so busy being busy, but they're also so busy trying to circumnavigate and avoid hard work, uncertainty, and pain by comparing themselves to other people. So just like, I'm not everybody's cup of tea, right? I'm more like a fine wine served in a dog bowl. Like, that's how I would describe myself. Like,
Not if you see my dog's bowl. No.
But, like, it's, you know what I mean?
I
Like,
saw this vision of wine in that bowl, and it was like,
so good. It's so good. I was like, people are just, they're trying so hard to just, we've got this, we've got this idea that, like, everything needs to be curated all the time. It has to be perfect. And that, to fit in, you've got to kind of have these tokenistic things that sort of symbolize this status or whatever. Also, just fucking surrender to the thing that you are and the place that you are and what you deserve and can call into your life. And you'll be surprised, because that was my old life. Very, very, like, tokenistic, right? To just, like, actually, like, I'm now living and I embody everything that is magnificent about this flesh suit that I'm having as a spiritual being, having a human experience, right? Like, just enjoy it. And it's not going to be easy. There are hard work, uncertainty, and pain. They're the three things in life we cannot avoid. Phil Stewart's psychotherapist in the States, he talks about this in his documentary, and it's like, we just spend our lives running from those three things. Like, everyone just doesn't want to do hard work anymore, but the harder you work, the luckier you get, right? But do the right work, the deep work, because when you have that awakening and you're like, oh, this is it, right? It's like, oh my God, everything implodes and explodes and contracts and releases all at once. And it's like, I don't know, inside that's where the meaning of life comes from. And I know that, having written this book, like, there's nothing I can't actually do. Everything I put my mind to, I have a vision board. If I don't update it, shit stops working in my life 100%. But it's like, if you want to manifest your wildest dreams, like, put the fucking thing out there. Like, make it a statement that that's the thing you're going to do. But then also, like, be prepared to reverse engineer the work that comes into it. And it's not just mechanical stuff. Like, you can't also just manifest. Like, that's a word that gets used way too much these days. It's like, oh, I'm just going to manifest. I'm like, bitch, like, get out of fucking bed and go for a walk. If you want to get fit, you can't just think your way to fit. You can't just affirmation your way to fit. Like, you actually, like, have to do the thing. But, like, also, like, what is that for you? Yeah, right. But you know what I mean? Like, it's this, but it's this miraculous. It's just like, oh my God. But I love that symbolism of, like, what you have encapsulated in that story, Fee, because the thing is, Flea, it is this, like, that's our life, and with it, you can't have love without the loss. You know, and does the thing make you better, or does it make you bitter? And all of our life experience and our lived experience and our cultural values and our expectations, they all are just this pretzel of a mess. But when we start to learn that that's the essence of ourselves and the unique qualities that we can offer to the world, like, you kind of just set yourself free.
Yeah.
I love it.
I know. I just love your diagrams and just, like, the epicness.
Oh yeah, I'm just like,
I'm just so glad you can see what I can see, because nobody else can seem to see what I can see.
I see it.
It does this, and it's like this, but it's like that.
Yeah. I get it, right? And when you started doing that, I'm like, yeah. And then the bottom of the E entwines into the A, and A entwines into the E, and then it
becomes the A, and it becomes the E, and if it's all joined together, it just becomes this really beautiful web of intricate knots.
Yeah.
It's like,
right? But that's the beauty of nature and the beauty in imperfection, and you know, nature doesn't lie, right?
Yeah. You have hit the nail on the head. Like, even through all of those threads that you've been sharing, like, even like better or bitter, these choices, and Flea, you were talking about this earlier, it's like, just decide what you're going to do and then action it. And this is like, where things start to come into alignment. So then the things that you're manifesting and dreaming of have then somewhere to flow to, and you think about nature, you think about water, you're thinking about the clarity piece, and this is such a gift that Flea has, and my husband, and, like, I have it there, but it's nice to have other people remind me to, like, hone things down and go, like, this way, so then I can do all the things and dance with all of the things, and we get to, integrate the shadow and the light, the messy and the parts that do need control and discipline, and it's, again, that fine dance between releasing control and refining the actions, which does take control and discipline and, to be in the body and do the things. So, it's interesting when you commit yourself to knowing yourself and all of those gifts. I think it's fascinating. This is why Flea and I have loved creating this business, and it's not in this academy, is about schools of life. People like yourself, you're embodying not only through your story, but you're teaching as well. And this is the essence of the teacher within all of us. But we're also also all of these other roles that we get to choose because we're choosing it. And it's like you said, wear the tutu, wear the fun
Mm.
things, put the glitter on. And this is part of like that beautiful piece of the inner child that
Mm.
gets to come out and play also in that divine dance of evolutionary growth, which I think
Mm.
is really, really powerful, that it gets to be both when we realize and allow ourselves to play and
And it's
bring.
to realize
Mm.
that we have that capacity to choose, because I remember being a child looking at all the adults. I'm like, oh, like I can't smile when I'm an adult. Like I'm not allowed to like laugh and shit. Like, oh my God, adults are so serious. And I think, you know, what you said there, Marie, about, you know, to have all this, it's like but it's also like, yes, like, and I think that simplify to amplify. Like if we simplify, we can
Mm.
really amplify, and we can allow ourselves to feel into those peripheral things which make our heart sing, which become mechanisms for us to express that authentic nature of our soul and divine love that we can share, that we're all in this together with, right? But also, like, if you're scattered, and especially I find entrepreneurs are like the friggin' worst, because they're my favorite people to deal with, right? So I mainly work with busy, time poor, because this is how they express themselves: busy, time poor professionals, entrepreneurs, and business owners, because they're the ones that's like, oh, you know, I've got this thing, and especially ADD, like, oh, and this, and then this, and it's like, but what, like, what do you actually do? Like, what is it? What's your purpose here, right? What's the thing? What's guiding this? Is there a value? Is there a vision? It's like, and they're like, oh, but I want to help this person, this person. I'm like, okay, yes, but what about you right now? Like you, what do you need? And you know, you see them, and they're like, I hate looking at myself in a mirror. I'm like, okay. And then they're like, oh, you know, like I'm at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, like I'm fanging for another coffee and I've already had four. Okay. Oh, you know, like I'm on my phone till like 1 o'clock in the morning. Flea's like,
Not the phone, the coffee.
no. But they're like,
I do.
you know, but you know what I mean? And it's like, and they're like, oh, you know, I'm so knackered. I'm so knackered. Like there's no way that I can do exercise. And I feel like, and those are all very valid statements, right? Because we become embroiled in this social ideology that to be productive and busy is like, it's worth something socially, but to the detriment of your longevity and your ability to serve beyond the span of your natural life. Like if you're fucking tired and you aren't moving enough, like you're pretty average at this point. And you're just like, I'm aspiring for all this. I'm like, dude, like you're like a flea in a jar. Like right now you have this lid on this jar and you're only jumping this high. And if we take that lid off and we offer you all of these things that you want, you're only still going to jump that high, man. Like we have to enable you to see that this exists outside the jar. But if we can bring yourself back to that purpose and that divinity of like this authentic love that you can share, like let's just find a way to do that, because without that, nothing else is ever going to make you happy.
And then the flea.
I'm ranting at this point.
Oh,
Yeah,
but
and
then
honestly,
the flea gets to
and,
jump super
and
out because it's super strong, and this is what Flea and I was
this
talking
is
about with her.
Flea. This is Flea. Flea right here. Flea right here. She's going, you're talking to me right now, bitch. Like you know, but no,
Oh,
but
totally.
right, like
That's my analogy right there. I am the jumping flea, and you try and contain me, and just watch. Just watch. I'll prove you
but
wrong
it's
because yeah, the ADHD in there. Yeah.
and the thing is like ADHD, I always say, like, I was actually diagnosed with ADHD in 1998. I was formally diagnosed in the 90s. And back then, like, nobody talked about ADHD. It was like, oh, put that kid in the corner because they don't understand. They're like the weird kid. Go in the withdrawal room, right? But, you know, like, for me, and being a girl, being diagnosed with ADHD, like, that was really tough because it's always boys. And I feel like, you know, being medicated for that. And yeah, it worked and it got me really great results at school. I mean, I got an A in physics. Nobody gets an A in physics. But at the end of the day, like the effect that had on my ability to express myself, because it dulls out the highs and it brings up the lows, and it kind of just, you're just like flatlining through existence. It's not ideal. So, you know, people talk about, oh, I want to get diagnosed with ADHD as a middle-aged woman. I'm like, do you though? Like, do you really? Because if you go on medication, because it's the point of being diagnosed to access pharmacological intervention, or is really what's happening is that you are so misaligned with your values and your actions right now because you are chasing this ideological version of yourself based on the presumption and opinions and judgments of others, that if we just like bring you back to this thing, your value system, maybe this will just stop all of that noise. How about that? And they're like, oh yeah, sounds all right. But they don't understand it because they're so programmed to just take pills and shit.
Really?
And yeah. So, I mean, I stopped being medicated about 2004. 2004, I stopped about 10 years ago. And, you know, like I talk really fast and I do multiple things and that's okay. But, you know, they come from a sense of purpose and knowing that that's just what I want to do. And it's tough to say no because you get FOMO, think you're going to miss out. But I talk about JOMO in my book. So instead of fear of missing out, what about the joy of missing out? Because yeah, you can wear the tutu and you can go out and you can be fabulous and wear the flower crown, but also like go and snuggle in your Ugg boots in your lounge room watching maths on a Friday night. That's okay. Take off your bra. Like, you know what I mean? Like that, do that too. That's real. Like that's, this is all real, but it's like, that's that, do that if that's what you need in that moment.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah. Oh gosh. You know, half the times I'm in interviews because you know they see this, I'm like, I'm not wearing a bra. I'm gonna be free because I'm in my own home, showing up for ourselves, and with that, just authentic piece of like, I get to do it how I want to do it. And there are days like where Flea and I like this morning super early. Sometimes like I've just woken up. I'm like, right, I'm here. Or even I'm sick. I know you're not 100%, but mate, you gave like 150% today, and I can't. If you think that's not 100%, my gosh, what would you be like if you oh my goodness. But that piece about that being authentic to yourself, showing up for yourself, and just doing it anyway. That's where a lot of the courage comes in, to just be ourselves. So I think that's a really beautiful way to end our fantastic call with you. That just flew by because of the energy. I was like, holy shit, it's only 6. Are there any final cards that came up, Flea, that were like...
Oh, I mentioned the other ones, but we've kind of gone through all of that, the spiritual union and the love begins. So I've mentioned this before for our other viewers, that spiritual union is with self. It has to be self first. And for all those beautiful people out there that are thinking that they can find love outside of themselves, it's not going to happen. It will never, ever happen, because you'll find that there'll still be something about them that totally ticks you off because it's the something in you that you don't like anyway. So, yeah. Union, first.
Feeling
If you can't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love anybody else?
Yes.
Can I get an amen out here? Sorry, that's RuPaul Drag Race quote.
But no, such a powerful way to end, and I'm going to be going off on a high after this and just feeling the vibes. But Loz, it's been so phenomenal to have you on board, and just like, yeah, I'm inspired and in awe, and just the energy that you bring and the wisdom and how you articulate everything as well, just with humor, but also like that knowledge is such a beautiful gift that you have. And if people are listening in and they want to connect with you, how can they find you?
Well, I try and be everywhere, but the best place is actually on my brand new website. So lozlife.com, and that'll link you to all of the relevant channels. But also on social media, like if you just do at LOZANTON, the rest will fill itself in. You don't need to know how to spell my actual elaborate last name. So, but it's a bright yellow background with a picture of me doing this, and it's not photoshopped. People are like, oh, you photoshopped. I'm like, no, I just spent many years as a child doing this.
I do them too.
Yeah, right. So yeah, anywhere. And look, I love talking to people, connecting with people. I have an amazing network and community that, you know, love to talk about these things. And I don't always get an opportunity to express myself in this way. And so I just want to thank you guys for holding space for me to share. I felt safe, and your kindness and your love and, your openness to hearing me share my story. I do receive that with so much love. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
Oh, and, on that thread, just quickly, if you want to hear more stories, more wisdom, and heartfelt warmth and safety in the woo-woo and the science, you got to tune in, folks, to our beautiful summit that's coming up, Turnkey Transformation. Already, we have 14 amazing speakers from around the world, from Canada to US, Australia. Where else is there? There's a few more amazing places.
India.
Yes, India. Oh my goodness. Come and join us, because this is where the authenticity comes alive and you get to tap into more amazing, unique energy, wisdom, stories that are heartfelt and just really imbued in integrity and people's life experience and stories, and also things that'll blow your mind. So come along, and we look forward to letting you know more about it. So check out our website and we'll see you guys there. Bye, everybody. Bye.